Welcome to Bunny Trails, a whimsical adventure of idioms and other turns of phrase. I'm Shauna Harrison.
And I'm Dan Pugh. Each week, we take an idiom or other turn of phrase and try to tell the story from its entry into the English language to how it's used today. Have you ever been at dinner with your extended family? Maybe over the holidays or at a reunion, and that one uncle starts talking about all the really odd things? It seems most families have that one person who appears paranoid about every topic, and everything was going so well up to that point. But once he started bringing up the conspiracy theories, everything goes off the rails. And according to the Oxford English Dictionary, off the rails means, quote, out of the proper or normal condition, off the usual or expected course, end quote.
Yeah, that's like an expected act. Yeah, like that's going to happen here.
But you're always hoping it won't
Wait,
happen.
if you live in the Midwest, I think at least. That's it.
I think family dynamics are like that across the globe, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Well, I saw several websites say this originated with the railroad off the rails. And I should note that I am dubious about what the internet says, as none of the reputable etymology sites make this same claim. But none of them address the point at all, so that doesn't mean it's wrong. So in an effort to see if I could independently back up any of the claims of a railroad tie-in, I went in search of the history of the railroad, which I think was a good start. And while transportation based on rails has been around since ancient Greece, the modern railway, as we might think of it, does line up with the origins of off the rails as an idiomatic expression. Here's a bit from a history cooperative piece on who invented the railroad. Quote, the credit for inventing the railroad is often given to George Stephenson, an English engineer who is celebrated for his key role in developing the first successful steam-powered locomotive and laying down the world's first public railway to use steam locomotives. Stephen's innovations in the establishment of the Stockton and Darlington Railway in 1825 marked the beginning of the railroad as we know it today, setting the foundation for the rapid expansion and evolution of rail transport globally, end quote. So I checked many other sources as well to ensure George Stephenson was a real person, because I did not want to have another who invented the toaster mishap. Yeah, exactly. So you can listen to episode 178 for more on that far-reaching hoax. But since everything I could cross-reference checked out, which means public railways started in the mid-1820s, and the first examples of the phrase I could find also started in the mid-1820s, just a few years later, which lends credence to the assertions that this phrase came from a train going off of the rails and causing mishap. Now, that's not to say there is evidence of it, but I didn't find any evidence against it either, so it seems a reasonable assumption to make, though we just aren't 100% sure.
This is a thing where, like, I don't think you'd even have to have had a train go off of the rails in order for people to come up with a phrase about it, because just the idea of it would be enough to be intimidating.
Yes, but I do think that it needs to be something that's in the broader public consciousness for it to become an idiom that many people would understand.
Right.
So I could totally see it being used among railway personnel or something, but for it to grow into something that many people would see, it would need to be something that many people would be aware of. And I think the idea of a public railway, one where people are able to use it, both passenger and cargo, then I think that was the necessary piece to take this from maybe some people said it, but for it to start showing up in documented works where we could see them using it idiomatically.
Right.
But yes, I think you're right. It's an easy jump on this one. So it definitely could be that. And this is why, like I said, we've had forms of rail transportation since ancient Greece. So it's not that there wasn't some sort of a rail-based system. It's just that this is when, in English, this really took off with the broader masses. Also, the long bunny trail I went down involving early versions of rail transport prior to the steam one was absolutely fascinating, and we'll explore more of the history of rail transport in our behind-the-scenes video for this week. Our behind-the-scenes video airs every Friday on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod. Okay, so this first example is from a letter dated August 2nd, 1828, to Sir Walter Scott from his son, Captain Scott. This was also the earliest citation used by the Oxford English Dictionary as well. According to Britannica Online, Sir Walter Scott was a Scottish novelist, poet, historian, and biographer who was often considered both the inventor and the greatest practitioner of the historical novel. A few of the works you may have heard that were written by Sir Walter Scott include Ivanhoe, Waverley, and The Heart of Midlothian. But back to the letter. It was later published in the 1932 work Sir Walter's Post Bag, a collection of unpublished letters to and from Sir Walter Scott, and the work was written and selected by Wilford Partington. Here's an excerpt from the 1828 letter from his son. Quote, "The Duke of Cumberland, who has been talking about seeing the regiment ever since he came to England, has not yet put his threat into execution, but has sent to say that he will at last do so upon Wednesday next, the day you receive this letter, at 11 o'clock, and that he will stay and dine with us. I think it would be more agreeable to many in the regiment if he gave the dinner instead of accepting it, but the honor is great of feeding a royal duke. They say here that the Duke of Clarence has gone off at the rail completely. The duties of the Lord High Admiral have upset him." End quote. So we see this has gone off the rail completely, and he has been upset. He has become upset or potentially mad, which would have a similar definition as crazy.
Right.
So yeah, that's the first time I could find it in print in searching all the varieties of off the rail or off at the rail or gone off or all that kind of stuff. So although gone off by itself would normally mean spoiled or destroyed, not necessarily off the rails, which is just out of the norm now.
Yeah.
This next one is from the Comic Annual for 1842 by Thomas Hood. Our phrase appears in the preface as the author is lamenting how his literary fortunes have changed over the past few years, though they seem to be turning around again now. Here is the excerpt. Quote, "The truth is that I seem to have said amen to the amenities of literature, to have deposited my last work on the library shelf. For a dozen successive years, some annual volume had given token of my literary existence. But alas, Anno Domini 1840 was unmarked by any such publication. A tie seemed to snap. A spell appeared to be broken. My engine had gone off the rail." End quote. Which I like this one because he's using he's using a variety of allusions to say things have the tides have turned for him, right? So
Right.
a tie is snapped, a spell is broken, his engine's gone off the rail. Like all of these things are his way of saying that the norm has been broken and a new day has dawned. Here's one from an article in the Bible Class magazine. The article is titled "Hints on Public Speaking" and is dated June 1882. Our phrase is found in this paragraph, quote, "But as we sometimes see notified on our railway lines that trains are not to go beyond a moderate speed through certain tunnels, so we would say don't go too fast. Don't say too much at this period of your education. If you, in your first remarks, attempt to say too much, you will assuredly go off the rails." End quote.
Yeah.
That's probably still pretty good advice. Don't try and say too much too fast because that, especially when you are new to a group or a process, because it is very likely you may go off the rails. This next one's an example from the Indian cases in the Nagpur Judicial Commissioner's Court, which is dated October 19th, 1928. And it is the case of Ramnath versus Hazrial in a foreclosure case in India. Now, in our paragraph, the defense was trying to make the argument that the case should not have been heard in the first place and instead dismissed before coming to the court. Quote, "It will not be out of the place to note here that the court of first instance really went off the rail when it considered that the decision of this preliminary issues was sufficient to dispose of the case." End quote.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're using it here. They're saying that they went outside the norm by even hearing it in the first place.
Right.
We'll look at another piece here. This is an example from a 1939 book, That Which Is Hidden by Robert Hitchens. Here's an excerpt that uses the phrase and then gives a little more detail to explain what it means to a character that doesn't quite understand. Quote, "And though I suppose she has been a good deal what one calls spoilt by people all her life. Because of her charm, she's never gone off the rails. What's that? The rails? Well, I mean, she's never mixed herself up in anything beastly. You know what I mean. End quote.
She's not been gone wild.
Right. She's not mixed herself up in anything untoward. She has done exactly what is expected of her in some places, but even though she's been spoiled, she is charming, and that has allowed her to probably get out of situations that may have caused her to go off the rails.
So this is saying, though, that she is spoiled because of her charm. So, maybe she keeps being charming because that's how she is.
I think the two are probably intermixed. Yeah. I think the case is that she's been spoiled all her life, but she's not gone off the rails because of her charm.
Right.
I don't know that she's being spoiled because of her charm, but I bet there is a case to be made that those two are tied together. Those are definitely linked.
Yeah.
All right, one more before the break, and this one comes from a 1965 translation of a 1962 French novel, The Mechanical Pianos by Henri Francois Rey. Here's a sentence that I think many of us will feel in our souls. Quote, "His thoughts and sensations had run off the rails. Exactly the right phrase. I'm running off the rails. My images are running off the rails. Just as they begin to run smoothly, I imagine they are on a point of forming a coherent and interpretable whole. They suddenly run off the rails and break up." End quote.
Okay. I run off the rails.
Well, with that, it's time to move to our more modern uses. But first, we need to say thank you to our sponsors.
This episode is sponsored by our amazing patrons on Patreon. And the cool thing about Patreon is it is 100% free to join the community. We have new things every weekday on the feeds. On Mondays, we have a conversation about what movies, shows, books, podcasts, and whatever else everyone is enjoying. Tuesdays see early access to the week's podcast. Wednesdays have all the links, books, songs, and other content mentioned in the week's episode. Thursday has patrons-only polls, and Fridays are our lightly edited behind-the-scenes video featuring all the cut content, goofs, and bonus facts you could imagine.
We've got some other pretty cool stuff too, like original digital artwork, once a month, made by Shauna, and direct access to Talk With Us. No algorithms getting in the way of what we see or don't see. Plus, you can get awesome name recognition like Pat Rowe does every episode. And our top spot is currently occupied by the amazing Mary Halsig Lopez. You can join the Bunny Trails community for free at Bunny Trails Pod on Patreon.
That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod.
We will start our modern uses in 1980 with a song by John Michael Osbourne. If you like early heavy metal or classic rock, you've likely heard the song Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne. It is from his debut solo album, Blizzard of Oz. That's a great name. And here is the opening verse and into the first chorus. Quote, "Crazy, but that's how it goes. Millions of people living as foes. Maybe it's not too late to learn how to love and forget how to hate. Mental wounds not healing, life's a bitter shame. I'm going off the rails on a crazy train. I'm going off the rails on a crazy train." End quote.
Yeah, rest in peace, Ozzy.
I think because of Ozzy Osbourne's pretty thick singing accent, and he famously is difficult to understand at times, and I more than most have trouble understanding spoken words when there's other sounds along with it, like music.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I ever understood the words to this until I was just looking at it here, but I mean, it's like, what a great concept, though. It's like he's recognized, he's like, there's a lot of people that are living, hating on other people. But it's I hope it's not too late to be able to learn how to love and forget how to hate. But then he also talks about, it's like, these are mental wounds and they're not healing. And that's a shame,
Right. Yeah.
And I'm just like,
he has like some deep
whoa.
messages in his music, Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it hits hard. But you have to read him because it's hard to understand him for anybody. Almost anybody, has struggles to understand the in the music. Here,
I need to go back and start listening to some Black Sabbath stuff too now, with him as the front man. I know he didn't write all of the songs or anything, but he wrote some of them, and it's just I thought this was a really interesting way to use the phrase and a really cool message of the song.
Yeah.
Well, She Believes in Me by Joe Cocker is a soft rock pop song off the 1999 album No Ordinary World. Our phrase opens the chorus, though I'll start with the first verse and move to the chorus. Quote, I'm tossing and turning and I can't get to sleep. Got something on my mind I just can't release. Then she whispers so softly that she believes in me. If I let her down and tried to disguise it, she always sees through it and always replies that, no matter what I do, she believes in me. All the times I failed, gone slightly off the rails, then she's there to remind me she believes in me. When it all goes wrong and I feel I'm on my own, she's there to remind me she believes in me. End quote.
It's really sweet.
That's a very nice song. I like Joe Cocker, but I think I'm probably more familiar with his late 80s and early 90s work, and I don't know that I've heard any of his work, from the late 90s or onward.
Right.
So I did listen to this song. Obviously, we've got a link to it on the Patreon and on the show notes at bunnytrailspod.com. But I did listen to it there, and I thought, yep, this is classic Joe Cocker, a little bit older than I remember, but yeah, this is definitely him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Going Off the Rails, Global Capital and the Crisis of Legitimacy is a 2003 book by John Plinder. Plinder, at the time of writing this book, was a senior editorial writer and columnist at the Financial Times and a regular current affairs broadcaster for the BBC and Channel 4. So at least he has the correct background to give context to this book's subject. Here's the synopsis from the publisher. Quote, in this thought-provoking work, writer and journalist John Plinder explores the model of capitalism advocated by English-speaking countries and asks the following pertinent questions. Why are developing countries financing the world's richest economy instead of the other way around? How have the markets come to appear so unstable? What is causing the erosion of the wealth creation process? And is the conventional view of this model actually correct? The capitalist model was developed in the 19th century, and recent events have shown the difficulties of adapting this to the demands of the 21st century, in which human and social capital are of far greater importance than physical capital. In Going Off the Rails, John Plinder shows how corporate scandals, inflated boardroom pay, corporate governance disciplines, and outmoded accountancy conventions have stretched the Anglo-American model to its limit and what the effects of this might be on globalization and the capital markets. End quote.
Okay.
I suppose if there are lessons to have been learned from this 2003 book, we have not learned them yet.
Yeah, I was like, this sounds like it could have just been written.
Yeah. I also, I appreciate the recognition that the capitalist movement, especially in the early 2000s like that, was still a very predominant English-speaking piece. But there are so many countries that seem to have adopted this capitalist outlook. And obviously, I've benefited greatly in my life from capitalism and being able to, sell my experience and my time. But I've also been taken advantage of during that time frame too. So I'm not necessarily opposed to capitalism if it's done right, but I've not really seen any economic model that was done well. Not communism, not socialism, not capitalism. None of them have really been done in the way that they in their purest forms. So take that, philosophers. Off the Rails is a 2007 book by Matt Jones. It has an interesting concept, though I feel like the synopsis from the publisher doesn't do a very good job of selling the book. I'm not sure what the hook is that gets me to read it, beyond just the interesting concept, but I suppose you might see something I'm missing. Quote, many years ago, a highly intelligent race of people living in China discovered a fault with the Earth's natural orbital trajectory, which, if left unresolved, would result in the world ending in the mid-21st century. The leaders of these people, whilst traveling the world in search of a solution to the problem, arrived in London. Here they stumbled on the theory that if they created vast but subtle movements across the Earth's surface, then such weight shifts would have a reasonable bearing on the rate at which the Earth rotates, and thus would alter its orbital path. To provide this weight, a project named Commuters was created, so called due to a misprint of computers. This was performed by building a railway infrastructure throughout the land and simultaneously inventing a large number of excitingly named, well-paid, but virtually harmless jobs. This created both the demand and the mechanism for many people to travel in the same direction at a given time of day. The group of pioneers were adamant that the real reason for their work should not be made public, yet at the same time the project needed to be monitored. To satisfy this, an organization called the Little People was created, whereby those directly involved with the project took invisible jobs within society. From these positions, they could easily observe their work without fear of detection themselves. They therefore occupied jobs that are commonly labeled working class or unskilled, as they were unlikely to be noticed by the commuters within these positions. End quote.
Hmm.
I don't feel like this is a story. I feel like, it's an interesting concept, but it's not a very good synopsis.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, it's kind of fascinating, but it's not.
Right? I mean, I think scientifically, this kind of a concept would already have been disproven by the MythBusters. But it almost has the highlights of a satire,
Mm-hmm.
But 2007 is awfully late to be writing satire about how we would secretly change the world, for the better to save it when we have so many other issues going on that are destroying the world and we're not doing anything about that. So like the
Right.
satire would almost get lost, I think. But if this book had been written like in the 1970s, that might be a different story about the if it was satire, especially with the concept of commuters as the project name,
Right. So then it kind of like I'm sitting here thinking like, does it speak to the meaninglessness of of these imaginary jobs, or is it speaking to the science piece of it, the end of the world? Like what's
it definitely is science fiction, so and it's billed as such, but it wasn't billed as satire, although I wonder.
Right. I just kind of wonder what the focus ends up being about the society or about the, the like science
A good
fiction
synopsis
story
would
of
have
it.
told us.
Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
feel like this guy's publisher did not do a very good job with that.
Right.
Well, Off the Rails is a 2021 feel-good movie starring Jenny Seagrove, Sally Phillips, and Kelly Preston. Here's the synopsis from the official trailer's description on YouTube. Quote, 3 best friends from college recreate their post-graduation trip across Europe to honor the memory of their friend Anna. Joining Kate, Liz, and Cassie is Anna's 18-year-old daughter, Maddie, fulfilling her mother's last wish to have them take this trip with her. When lost passports, train strikes, and romantic entanglements get in their way, they put old feuds aside to complete the journey and remind themselves that they are still at their peak. End quote.
Okay.
It sounds very much like a feel-good style movie of like finding your way in life and learning the lessons that life has made you forget.
Right.
Yeah. I watched the trailer and it also looked very much like that. I feel like the synopsis does a pretty good job. Here. Off the Rails is a 2024 country song by Brantley Gilbert off the album Tattoos. Here's the chorus. Quote, run it off the rails, kick it into 4-wheel, set it on fire, smoke it like a shine steel. Coal rollin', you know it, we're banging hell's bells. Twin stacking, we back, and we yellin' hell yeah. Hell nah, baby, ain't no slowing down. They gonna call the law, then they better do it now. Yeah, all aboard, this crazy train's on 12. Tonight, we gonna run it off the rails. End quote.
Okay, if you read those lyrics to me in like the early 2000s and tried to tell me it was a country song, I'd have been like, no, probably not.
I mean, outlaw country for sure, you know.
Yeah.
Well, the self-help book, Off the Rails, A Parent's Guide to Restoring Trust with Your Teen, Regaining Your Influence, and Getting Them Back on Track by Joshua Henry was published in 2025. Here's the synopsis from the publisher. Quote, if your teen feels distant, rebellious, or out of control, you're not alone, and there is a way back. Off the Rails gives you a proven 5-step method to reconnect with your teen, restore trust, and regain your influence without yelling, punishment, or power struggles. Parenting coach Joshua Henry guides you with clear tools, heartfelt wisdom, and real solutions to help you rebuild the relationship you've been missing. Whether your teen is shutting down, acting out, or completely off track, this book shows you how to become the calm, confident leader they need. It's never too late to turn things around, end quote. That is a tall order.
Wow.
Yeah, as a father who had 3 teenagers in the house, this seems awful easy the way they've made it sound.
Yeah, it's like
5 steps. You just need to do these 5 steps.
Here's this miracle book that we've provided you.
Right? Right? I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe Joshua Henry has figured it all out.
Maybe.
I don't know. Off the Rails by Benet is the 3rd single off the 2025 album You're an Angel, I'm Just Particles. In an interview with ReadDork.com, Benet describes the song thusly, quote, "It's an aggressive, angry, chaotic product of my navigating the current state of the world and channeling my existential dread. It's feminine rage, sick of being pushed around and embracing the chaos," end quote. Here is the second chorus, quote, "I'm off the rails, think I might fall apart, and I'm crazy now, but it got dark. Can you light the fuse? Think I might fall apart. I'm off the rails, had to restart," end quote. I think many folks feel a sense of rage at the injustices of the world right now, so Benet's particular flavor of rage hits just right for many. It feels like many things have gone off the rail recently across the world, from wars and genocide to a resurgence in fascism and to dwindling rights for minorities, the LGBT community, and women in general. This phrase, off the rails, seems poignant in its simplicity, and I imagine we will continue to see its popularity soar in the near future. That's about all we have for today. If you have any thoughts on the show or pop culture references we should have included, reach out to us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod, or comment on our website, bunnytrailspod.com.
It's poll time. Recently, we posed this question to our patrons. You've lost a bet. Would you rather have to wear clown shoes for a day or wear clown makeup for a day? Shoes beats makeup roughly 60% to 40%, but there are great reasons on both sides of the discussion. JGP tackles the makeup side. Quote, "I'd have to choose the makeup since due to my lack of coordination, I fear that if I had to wear clown shoes, I would trip so often I would be a danger to not only myself, but everyone and everything around me." End quote. While Jan comes down on the shoe side, quote, "Going the less creepy route and taking the shoes," end quote.
Cheryl and I are of the same mind initially, though when forced, we have different allowances. Here's Cheryl's take. Quote, "Neither is great. I'm clumsy enough without clown shoes, but that's slightly better than having an itchy face for weeks," end quote. Personally, I abhor both of these options as well. On the one hand, I generally dislike wearing shoes, and big floppy shoes sounds awful. But on the other hand, clown makeup is creepy. But of the two, I think I would wear the clown makeup, and I would just make sure to add like a big red nose and a silly wig so that no one thinks I'm just an insane Clown Posse superfan or anything. Juggalos unite!
ICP. Well, I'm also very clumsy and very, very not into clowns. So I think I'd just have to win the bet. I don't know. At the end, I'd suppose I'd go with the shoes and just like shuffle a lot.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, it is actually probably easier just to put the shoes on and shuffle around in those. Especially for me, I don't wear makeup. I have worn makeup on stage, and that's pretty much it. And once when I did some television interviews in the studio. But like other than that, I've just really never worn makeup, and I've certainly never put makeup on myself. So I'm saying all of this, but I think I'm probably coming down on shoes now too, from just the the simple logistical statements from it.
Right.
You know, I mean, just the ease of being able to put the shoes on, and then goodness, I can just shuffle, I guess. But
like, are also the rules like you still have to go to work and stuff? Because I could totally, I'll just call in, you know, like I'll just sit around my house in my clown shoes, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's true. I certainly don't want to go to work in clown makeup. That's fair.
Imagine though you're wearing clown shoes, you just like move away from your desk and start walking around. Somebody needs something, and they're like, "What's going on?"
Yeah. So my youngest had clown shoes that were like really big, right? And you actually just had a regular shoe inside of them, basically, and then you wore the clown shoes over that, and so it was a lot easier to walk around in. But even that, I feel like would be like walking around in flippers, like when you're going diving or snorkeling. If anybody's ever done that, I think it would be like walking around like that still. And yeah, that's just
flat-footed. Like
I almost would have to walk backwards and like moonwalk everywhere. There's the answer. I'm gonna wear the clown shoes. I'm gonna moonwalk everywhere, and I will just sing some Michael Jackson songs as I do it.
Nobody would know what to do with that.
That's true. They would go, Dan has gone off the rails.
Exactly. Well, as a reminder, our silly polls mean absolutely nothing and are not scientifically valid. And patrons of all levels, including our free tiers, can take part. Head over to patreon.com/bunnytrailspod to take this week's poll. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again next week. Until then, remember,
words belong to their users.